Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, the sports guy himself, the podfather, Bill Simmons, had a lot to say about the Phoenix Suns on his podcast Sunday night, and none of it was positive. We'll give our thoughts on the body language of this team, as well as one number 35, and what that all says about his status with the Phoenix Suns next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Tuesday game day. Don't forget Locked On Suns free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Joining me, as always, from the wonderful West Valley, my fellow Suns credential media member. How are we feeling on this Tuesday, Ben Garcia?
I'm good. We haven't really given each other nicknames yet for our numerous podcasts that we've done together. I would like to think of ourselves as the firemen because we are just putting out fires every day on this show. I mean, listen, the Suns, they might be awful, but man, there is never a shortage of things recently to talk about. So, I mean, holy cow. Let's see how
the right type of awful with high expectations where it ends up just giving us something to think about. But I think fans would probably prefer it the other way, right? A nice, quiet 60-win season, that would have been nice.
I can't believe I would ever envy being the Charlotte Hornets because if we were doing like Charlotte Hornets right now, we'd be like, oh, LaMelo, he's staying healthier, and Mark Williams, and, we got to keep him, and, an up-and-coming team. We have our draft picks, but instead we're talking about a team that is the most expensive team in the history of sports, in the history of basketball, and they're awful, and that's not a good place to be. So I just never thought we'd be here.
And it is what leads to segments like we heard on the Bill Simmons podcast this morning, where he was reporting from his live in-person appearance at the Suns-Spurs game last Thursday in Austin, Texas at the Moody Center. So we'll talk through what he had to say and what also his Sunday guest Ryan Russillo had to say about the Suns, as well as kind of an obvious segue from there, but something I know Suns fans are really starting to think long and hard about, which is the future of Mike Budenholzer, something that I am a little squeamish on still, but we'll get there. But I'll just read the section in question, Ben, from this podcast where he said they weren't talking to each other at this Suns-Spurs game. He was pretty close to the bench. He says, you judge certain things like how many guys get up after a big play on the bench. What are guys doing during timeouts? What happens when a star player walks by his coach? Does he acknowledge him? Does he talk to him? Does he kind of just stomp by? Does one of the star players yell at the coach? Well, KD yelled at Bud twice during that game. He goes on, there was one of my favorites is when there's somebody shooting free throws at the other end, and one of the stars moves to the furthest part of the court away from everybody to just go sulk in the corner. If you've ever been to a live NBA game, you've seen that move. Sometimes it's just when those guys, this is me talking now, they just kind of, want to separate themselves because they're steamy. Sometimes it is indicative of something else, and Bill Simmons went on to say that was KD near the end. He was so mad about the way that they used him in that game, and the team played like crap. They were playing all the hits, and it is not a team that seemed very happy. And I don't know, actually, we were talking in it. It was like, I don't think Bud was trying to get fired, but it was the kind of coaching where you were like, if that guy's trying to get fired, I would point back to that game. And he went on to kind of talk about the great St. Allen, De'Aaron Fox stuff that you and I shredded in the moment because it was a really bad decision. But we actually referenced a Bill Simmons tweet that night talking about this game, Ben, where we talked about some of the body language and everything, and Dwayne Rankin had the tweet about KD kind of barking at Bud about the defense late. So some of this was known, but I think Simmons going out of his way to reiterate how ugly and dicey this got that night tells me that it's really affecting them. I mean, it should, right? But what do you think?
Yeah, losing weighs on teams. I think if the team, losing not only like makes everything worse, but it also just magnifies your issues to everyone else just watching with the naked eye. And so if the Suns right now were the Oklahoma City Thunder and they were winning games, but they were doing the same exact things on the bench or in the corner or Kevin Durant style, sitting alone, whatever it is, right? No one would bat an eye, but it gets amplified.
Or it would just be really weird. It's like, do you guys not
it
like
would
winning?
Be, of course.
Right?
Exactly. And, for a long time, that was the whole Kobe thing, right? You're up 2-0, you don't seem happy.
Exactly.
So, like, there is some version of that, but it doesn't really get magnified unless your team sucks. And the Suns are, like, they're just terrible. Like, I saw someone else say this. I can't reference who it was, but it was like, they're not even a good team. Like play to play, they are not even good. And so they look like what the Hornets look like on night in, night out basis. And honestly, I would take those teams over the Suns any day. So when Simmons says this, it's kind of old news to me because,
well, that's what I was going to say. Is it better? Like, okay, not better, but like, is it hearing him say it so specifically in this description? Does it feel more extreme than you would have thought, or is this about what you would expect?
About what I expected.
Okay, so then if it's bothering them so much, why does it keep happening? I think is the obvious question after that, right? Because if we agree that mentality and effort seem to be a big part of the issue, I would expect a team to be on the sidelines, not yelling at their coach, not going and separating themselves and being Mr. I'm upset. I don't even know who Simmons was necessarily referencing on there. I think KD at some points, but other guys, he was being a little more vague as to who he was even referencing. But wouldn't if based on us, what we see on the court every day, I would expect that this team's just checked out and over it. But this doesn't seem like checked out and over it. So that's where I'm seeing a little bit of two different directions here where they play like they don't care, but apparently they're acting like they care.
Because they don't have a leader. Like, I hate that we go back to that L word that everyone gets so upset about, but Kevin Durant is not a great vocal leader. Yes, he's a great leader of players can, like, I don't know, Oso or Ryan Dunn can watch what he does to get ready for the game. And they're like, that guy leads by example in that sort of retrospect. But Devin Booker's always been a quieter guy. Chris Paul was the leader when Devin Booker was here. Devin Booker was the best player, but Chris Paul was the leader. And Bradley Beal, you can't be the third best player on the team and be the letter the entire time. And at times, he's not even the third best guy. He's not going to be the leader. Well, exactly, and he's not going to be. So the Suns have they have a bunch of passive aggressive guys led by Kevin Durant. No, Kevin Durant stands. This is not Kevin Durant's fault. He wasn't asked to be put in this situation, but when everything builds up around you and no one is willing to talk about it, like I haven't heard of a players only meeting or things happening behind the scenes. Like the Suns don't have that guy. They have no one that they can turn to. Like the Lakers have that guy.
Equal blame, right? This is equal blame to
for everyone.
Booker, Durant, James Jones, Mike Budenholzer, Bradley Beal, even, fill in the blank with a lot of teams have a role player who can provide some of that. You need it from your best guys too, but Jay Crowder was a big element of that here at times. And, Andre Iguodala was that, I think.
I was just going to say,
one of those examples, even though Draymond kind of was too for the Warriors. Like, that is also part of it. I'm not going to say, Royce O'Neal, like, this is your fault or something, but like, it's not coming from anywhere. And I think that's a super valid point to make here, where everybody knows there's a problem, but nobody wants to grab it by the what and solve it. And I think that is, it's just crazy. It doesn't feel possible. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like it should be able to go that way. That hole should be so blatant that these guys getting so angry just fizzles into nothing because they can't kind of wrap it together and channel it the right way. That just like that's infuriating to hear,
I just think they're all
just on a human level.
I think this team is really soft mentally. And I don't mean by they need to go punch someone in the face, but I think each of them are too uncomfortable to say someone else is doing something wrong. I don't know if Booker does this. Here we go. Kevin Durant fans, I'm going to blame Booker a little bit. I don't ever see Devin Booker checking Kevin Durant. I don't ever see, it's like what goes around comes around. If Kevin Durant is going to influence Devin Booker is just as good and is going to influence Kevin Durant. And if you're never checking him, and I don't see that, I don't see him yelling at Kevin Durant, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I love the fact that Kevin Durant will go after guys. You mentioned the Budenholzer thing at the San Antonio Spurs game. He was screaming at him at the end of the Raptors game too, because he was telling Bud, I'm not going to get that call. You should know that better than anyone. And also, like, going back to the Budenholzer thing, he should also be a leader. And we're not just pointing out one guy. This is a collective failed effort, and they don't have anything they can feed off each other. I think they're too soft to say anything to each other. I think at times Bradley Beal doesn't really he cares, but it's not the most important thing to him. Kevin Durant, I think oftentimes is like, well, I'm doing my part. And I think Devin Booker at times isn't even doing his part, and also doesn't feel like he needs to check anyone because Chris Paul used to do it. And then I guess he just thought Kevin Durant would, even though Kevin Durant continues to say he won't. So, I mean, I think that's where it is there, man. But the Bill Simmons stuff was eye-opening because now everyone else is starting to see it. Like, the national media is starting to catch on.
All right. So on that note, equal blame on the leadership side, and clearly,
can you say equal again? Just for the people. It's all equal.
And clearly beyond repair. But Russillo and Simmons had more to say, specifically relating to Durant, not about his leadership, not about even what necessarily was happening behind the scenes at all, but what was happening on the court right in front of them, and maybe on some phone calls last summer. We'll get there next. First, today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game for the rest of the season, you score a huge deal the very next day. It's simple. When any player puts up 50 plus in a game during the 2024-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off and order up to $10 off the next day from noon until midnight. Maybe you want a game day feast to celebrate. Maybe you're just riding solo for a Suns game. You don't even need to have people over. Get some wings, pizza, burgers, whatever it might be, delivered straight to your door. And after that epic 50-point performance, it's 50% off, up to $10 off. Maybe you do want to invite people over. You need a little more. That discount goes even further because you're getting 2 pizzas. You're getting 2 dozen wings, whatever it might be. Bring some people over. I would recommend not even doing it for a Suns game at this point. There's some great Saturday, Sunday, ABC, big national TV NBA games going on. Just watch those. Sign up for Dash Pass. Be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off the next day on any order up to $10 total off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight the day after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Keeping it rolling. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter if you have not already. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Free for you. Great analysis on the Suns and the NBA. Stay up to date on the latest news. Even get some fantasy advice. Again, free for you, and it supports us big time. All right, Ben. Keeping on the Bill Simmons podcast and their discussion about the Suns, they did eventually get to Durant in more specificity. I'll just read it to you. It's a little bit of what we did talk about in that last segment, I think, combined with what Russillo added, where he said, I don't think he's wanted to be there. Going back to last summer, and then Simmons interrupted and said, you think this whole season he didn't want to be there? I've whatever. And Russillo said, no, I think there were pretty strong indications that if he could have gotten his preference to go somewhere else this past summer, he would have done it. Now, right after that, Simmons, you and I were talking before, you don't listen to Simmons as much. I picked up on this, maybe, I don't know if you did, that he kind of quickly moved on. And I don't know what that says, but I really don't. I'm not saying that to like drop any kind of hint. It was just odd to me where Russillo said this and then they kind of just passed over it. But that would mean the summer of 2024 is what these guys were talking about. They're not saying coming up this summer he would want to leave. They are saying, Russillo at least, is saying that he wanted to or could have been open to a move last summer. So when you kind of combine what Simmons said about Kevin Durant and the way he's deployed on the court, Ben, plus this idea that, maybe he would have been open to this. That would maybe explain some of the Rockets stuff. I don't know. Tell me what you think of this conjecture, because that's all it is. But what does it make you think? And you're muted.
Replaying what I just said, but I mean, I think no, like, of course, if Kevin Durant could get his preference, I think he would have wanted to leave last year. I think he knew. Now, this was, I think, before. Like, I think two things can be true. I think he didn't want to be here after getting swept and would like to get his preference, but didn't want to have to request a trade again, because even though that'd only be his second time, people would treat it like it's his 50th time. Then you move on to, they get Tyus Jones, they get Mike Budenholzer. You kind of get a new rejuvenation about this team. I had it, you had it. I think at that point, Kevin Durant did want to be here. But I do think at some point of last offseason, as soon as they got eliminated, no, he didn't want to be here. But I don't buy into the reasoning because he's been used wrong. Like, the Kevin Young thing, okay, like, sure. The offensive coordinator, maybe not so much in the NBA. Maybe he wasn't being used right. But, like, this is another different.
I actually have
totally
a conspiracy that if Kevin Young had just, and this is totally confirmation bias, I just wanted Kevin Young to get the job at that time, so maybe I'm just going to ride that till I die. But I think if he had actually just been the head coach, I think it actually would have worked better. If I'm being honest. I know people hated him, but
I don't know.
If you watch how much worse the offense is this year from the guy we thought was going to come in here and fix it, it kind of makes you appreciate the way that things were set up last year, even if it wasn't perfect, in my opinion. But anyway.
No, I mean, I think it was pretty awful last year, and I think it's pretty awful this year, but I'm still yet to see from anyone.
One was better is all I'm saying.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was better until, he left, I think it was midway through the season and went to BYU.
After the season. Yeah.
Oh, it was right after the season? I don't know why I thought it was during the middle of the season. That whole season was a blur. But
tangent, I got us on, but continue.
No, it's all good. The Kevin Durant stuff, is someone going to offer me a solution to why he's not being used correctly? I cannot. The number one thing I see on social media, and it's social media, is, Kevin Durant only had 6 shots in the fourth quarter. Okay, I understand maybe they could use him a little better. Sure, I can agree to that. The Suns' record has been awful. But at some point, if you're a top 10 player of all time, and I think you are a top 10 player of all time, don't come in here with the Larry Bird nonsense. I just think Kevin Durant is a better player than him. One had better team success, one didn't. You need to demand the basketball. Like, you have to go up to the coach and say, give me the damn basketball. Kobe Bryant did that. LeBron did that at times. Like, you cannot be waiting for it to come to you. And yes, people will say, do you want him just to go over there and rip the ball from Booker? Like, yeah, I kind of do want him to do that. Show some assertiveness. Go get the ball and go take over the game. You're a top 10 player ever. Like, I'm so over this idea that, like, what do we do then? We got to run more pick and rolls? We got to get him out in space more? Like, what are we doing? What is this? What's the solution? Because it's 2 different systems now.
I mean, there is a right way to use him, right?
What is it? I mean, what are the Suns clearly doing wrong? Because I do think him sulking in the corner sometimes is on KD.
Fair, but I think that there's a difference between if he's being used and how, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes the problem is he's not being used. I think that's kind of what you're talking about. You're saying those stretches where, you'll see online fans getting frustrated. KD hasn't taken the shot since 11:23 in the fourth quarter, blah, 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 we always see.
It's exactly what I'm referencing.
That's not being used, right? Like, he's just not involved. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is something to be said for go assert yourself, especially when it's not as if we're playing a lot of structured basketball here in the Valley of the Sun right now. So the idea of, like, he's not being utilized in the set. Well, what freaking set? There's no set a lot of the time. So, it's just about who's going to kind of take it. But then there's how. And I do think there is valid criticism when you see the ball in Bradley Beal's hands and he's not creating advantageous situations for the team's offense. When, obviously we've criticized them for not utilizing Tyus necessarily correctly, but I would even say Tyus running a pick and roll with Mason Plumlee to start a possession would be an example of Kevin Durant not being used properly if he's just a floor spacer or something like that. But I think that, honestly, I look at early in the season, or even, in my opinion, Monty did a pretty good job in the limited time that we got watching that, where if you can get Kevin Durant a mismatch, get him in motion, and get him the ball to work in space, not in a static situation where teams can come and strip him or stonewall him, but let him, in a flow, catch the ball against a defender that can't guard him and either make a quick decision to shoot, draw help and pass, whatever that might look like. I think even in his mid-30s, where the turnover rate we've talked about, the decline in assists that we've talked about, all that stuff is true. I think that could still, and we've seen it, still work. But I guess I'm just making the distinction again between how he's used and whether he's used. And the whether, I do think, can sometimes be his fault. The how, I think, is the coach's fault. I mean, the coach is the one telling the players how to play basketball. And if he's not going to what we see work often enough, I think he deserves that criticism. But do you have anything on that?
I would agree with you. I would agree with a lot of the things you said. The biggest issue with me is if you are, in my opinion, a top 10 guy of all time, an MVP, a finals MVP, a champion, you need to go assert yourself on offense if you haven't had a shot in 6 minutes. I don't know of anyone, even a high school superstar player, that just takes the back seat in games because other guys are heaving up shots.
Even like if that means calling a set that ends up with you taking a shot. It doesn't have to be Kobe Bryant hero ball in order for that to happen. It can be, hey, we ran this 3 minutes ago and I got an open look. Let's run it again.
Yeah, and right? it's 1,000%. But it's also goes back to the leadership factor. And this is a little bit more on KD because we're talking specifically about KD. I don't think he has the ability I don't think he has the capability in himself to yell at Booker or Bradley Beal, give me the damn basketball. I don't think he has that. I think he'd rather at times be passive aggressive and show he's upset, but not verbalize that he's upset. And then no one knows what he's thinking. And Booker has the same leadership issues. Bradley Beal has the same leadership issues, but we're specifically talking about KD. And I think that's where the issue lies too. But of course, Bud needs to realize, oh crap, it's been 6 minutes and one of the greatest players of all time, I think the greatest pure scorer of all time, hasn't touched the basketball. Like, that is also on him. But it's not just on Bud. It's a 50-50 proposition at this point because now I've seen two different regimes. So that's where I would land on it.
Yeah, and we'll close with a look at whether Bud is coaching for his job. But to go back to the transaction side of this, the part that I would agree with, or that I could see as far as KD would have been okay with leaving. Like, wouldn't everybody have?
Yeah.
After that sweep?
That was kind of my point, is like, why wouldn't you? Like, why wouldn't you want to leave? I mean, I had discussions filling in on Fox Sports 910 doing the same thing. I'm like, hey, listen, and this was before when I was like, see what you can get for Devin Booker. Now I am so far off that, especially with some of the things that I've just kind of thought of since then. But like the Kevin Durant thing, I was like, you got to move on from KD. Like, just move on now, rip the Band-Aid off. It hurts, but it sucks. Figure it out. And then of course, Tyus and Budenholzer came into the equation and then we all got jumped back on. But yeah, everyone would have been. Everyone.
Yeah. Even
everyone
Booker,
saw this team.
I mean, whatever. Especially if you're like, Russillo included the caveat of like, oh, well, if it had been his preferred destination. It's like, well, yeah, you're basically saying at that point, if you serve up the perfect scenario on a platter, would he have said yes? It's like, what are we even really discussing at that point? So it was so vague. And then again, because Simmons just quickly passed it by, it just made me wonder, like, I don't know. I just think if that was real, we would have heard about it. Because also, if you remember back to last year, Matt Ishbia came out on the record and said, we're not trading Kevin Durant. Remember? I mean, that was when all the Rocket stuff happened around draft night. And then Matt Ishbia posted on Twitter saying, like, no way, this is not happening. We're determined to make this fit, and on and on. So it just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it fully adds up to where anything was actually close from KD's side, from the from the Sun side at all, even after such an ugly sweep.
Russillo, the only thing that made me kind of look twice or think twice about it was the fact that Russillo's got pretty good ties to the Washington area. So I was worried about his ability to kind of understand. I always hear this guy talking about things in Washington, the Washington Wizards. Maybe I'm pulling that out. Maybe that's not well known, but I've watched a podcast or him or two where like he enjoys watching like the Wizards and things like that and in that area. So I just would assume that maybe he's got some ties, but again, I'm just spitballing here. Maybe he does have some tie to Kevin Durant, because it feels like, I mean, listen, if you know who says that they got ties to Kevin Durant, listen, man, maybe Ryan Russillo, who likes some of the Wizards and things kind of going on over there in Washington where KD's from, like maybe he's got ties to him too, and he knows something that we don't. Like that wouldn't shock me, but no, I mean, I think that was overblown a little bit.
All right. Suns fans ready to move on from a third coach in 3 off seasons. Is Mike Budenholzer coaching for his job next? If my sarcastic tone and, sports radio voice wasn't enough for everybody heading into that segment, then I hope I'll just say it here. I don't think Mike Budenholzer is coaching for his job. Ben and I kind of talked about this the other day. And
hot take.
More from the standpoint of, right, that like what people want to see from Bud wouldn't be making the Suns better. Like they wouldn't be winning more games if he was doing X, Y, or Z. But I guess let me ask it to you a little bit of a different way, because I don't think, like, let me ask you this. We don't think it's necessarily what we would do, and we don't think it's what's causing the mess that the Suns are in. But just to start the conversation off, what % chance would you put on that he will get fired, that he could get fired? How likely is that?
Fat zero. Fat zero. There's no chance he's getting fired. Negative 50%. I will put the house that I do not own on it that he will be back next season. And here's the whole thing with the Mike Budenholzer thing, especially coaches in the NBA. It is so easy to chase off a head coach, but let's just have this conversation, Cookie. This really dumb conversation of should Budenholzer be fired. One, if you keep running coaches out of town, you will not get good head coaches to want to come here. It's not going to happen. Why would Spoelstra, if he went on the market, he won't? Or Popovich in his heyday go on the market?
Coach.
Okay, who would you like? Rick Carlisle? Like, why would Rick Carlisle come here? I don't even like. Who do?
There's 30 of them.
Or Mike.
The same reason we always say.
Okay, fine. Who was last year's coach of the year? Thunder head coach. Like, let's go him. Let's say he gets fired. Why would he come here? Or let's say that, like, why would anyone come here?
Okay.
No one is going to take this job without job security.
So that's the reason you think he won't get fired, is because they're scared of somebody in the future?
No. And the other reason is this. You don't get to have the opinion that Mike Budenholzer should be fired and then not have a then what succession plan. Fire Mike Budenholzer, then what? What are you going to do? And I think the Suns are asking that internally too. Oh, we're going to fire Bud. And then what? Who are you going to go hire? Kenny Atkinson ain't leaving the Cavs job. Like, what do you want to do?
Even if you remember, even last summer, they didn't fire Frank Vogel the next day. They waited to make sure. I mean, we never got this, spelled out. But obviously what happened is they assured themselves that they could hire Mike Budenholzer in those few days while they waited to make their final decision on Vogel. And then they did that.
They waited like 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so that succession plan was being figured out, and then they made the call once they had it. But I agree with you. That's the number one reason of why I don't think that it's going to happen, is that Mike Budenholzer is about as good as it reasonably gets. Unless you get lucky and you happen into a Mark Daigneault, a Joe Mazzulla, guys like that, where you just happen to hire the right young guy at the right moment and he's ready. Yeah, Udoka, that was even a second go around, Like, it's it's not going to get much better than Mike Budenholzer. Okay, so if we're in agreement on that, I think part of the reason you would say it's not going to get much better than Mike Budenholzer would be sort of like the pedigree, the track record, the kind of like shepherd of your program, very Spursy kind of like I build his coaching tree's great. He hires well. He has a vision. He's been around a long time. He's good relationships, all that sort of stuff. Because it's not necessarily based on what he's done with the team on the court. That would be the case against him. That's what I think fans are reacting to. The case for him would be all the stuff that I just said. And that brings us to the part that I think could be potentially the difference here, which is showing that vision between now and the end of the season. I think being able to make hard decisions and coach like somebody who does have that long of a leash. Because a coach who knows he's going to be around would probably not be putting Ryan Dunn like in the doghouse the way that he is, or being so committed to a free agent point guard who's about to leave in the summer, or, whatever it might be. So I think if some of that relationship stuff still feels off, I could see that might make our answer different in 2 months.
My answer is not going to change. I'm not firing the head coach. I am not. There's nothing. The Suns could lose out the rest of the year, and I wouldn't fire the head coach.
I think that I agree with you that they shouldn't, but we don't make the call.
No, billionaires don't become billionaires by continuously giving away money. Like at some point, the bill comes due for Ishbia too. He's not paying.
Well, they don't pay Monty anymore because he got another job, and I think the contract would be over anyway.
Yeah, but you're still going to pay 3 head coaches. You're going to pay Vogel. I almost went to flipping off the camera. Flipping on Vogel. You're flipping. You're getting rid of Vogel. You're getting rid of Budenholzer, and then you got to get another coach. So you're paying 3 guys. 3. He's not doing that. It's not happening. It's for better or for worse, Budenholzer is here to stay. And like I think you undersold it a little bit where it was like, well, it just doesn't get much better. Budenholzer won a championship. Frank Vogel won a championship. And Monty Williams was the most coveted head coaching hire when the Suns hired him and went to a championship. Like,
Ty Lue
excuse
was coveted that summer.
Who was?
Ty Lue.
You might be right. I just remember the Suns.
The Lakers ended up getting their third preference because they wanted Ty, then they wanted
Monty,
and then they ended up with Frank Vogel, which is a funny subplot.
Well, my whole thing is just like finals appearance, championship.
No, you're absolutely right.
And you're gonna blame that guy, like.
And Monty,
cool.
To your point, was the most at least in terms of the dollars he got,
$80 million.
Exactly. So.
That's the reason why the Suns don't have to pay him because he got so much damn money.
Yeah.
I
agree with you. I don't think it's a conversation, but like let me ask it to you this way: do you think that the fans clamoring for it would get up to Ishbia or Jones? Like
no. Yeah. Also, that's another thing. Fans, stop adding Matt Ishbia in your Twitter. He's not reading it. Just stop. Matt Ishbia, you gave it a good shot. Now pull the plug. Us fans understand. He's not reading it. Just stop.
Yeah, you want to talk about stuff that billionaires don't do to become billionaires. Probably reading their mentions.
I highly doubt he runs his own Twitter. I highly doubt it. I'm sure
unless he wants to put, like.
Yeah, but even
the
then,
stuff
man,
like the KD comment last year, he's just sending that over to somebody.
Even that, I still, I think he sends it over to someone,
yeah.
And I think someone presses send. Like it's like,
yeah,
I don't. It's like we saw years ago. Like Donald Trump doesn't do his own tweets. Like he says them and someone else writes them out. I think that's kind of how it is. Like with Ishbia too. So I'm just over it. And like for the fans, like today was a really bad. It was like one of the first days I thought about like just getting rid of Twitter because like just for the day because like it was so toxic today. Oh, Booker needs to.
It's great over here.
Yeah, Booker needs to go, and Kevin Durant needs to go, and you deserve better. God, get off of your. Oh my God, I wish I could just stop. Like, just stop. It sucks right now, and it'll get better. But we're not just going to trade Booker just to trade Booker. We're not just going to let Durant go scot-free and not charge another team anything, because by golly, he deserves a championship. Like, oh my God, stop with your low sports self-esteem. It'll be okay. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and everything will be okay. It sucks right now, but it'll get better. God, today was a horrible day on Suns social media. It was so bad. I couldn't stand it. Between deleted tweets and fans freaking out, I'm like, oh my God. I guess people have just not been watching the same team I've been watching all year, which was expecting something different in February.
I think that Sam Cooper put it pretty well.
I saw that tweet. To
this.
That's actually what talked me down.
He said the level-headed fans are checked out. Those who are left either feel an obligation to keep watching, are certifiably insane, or some mix of the two. And I feel like that's kind of where we are. But we know that the everydayers are not certifiably
I love the
insane.
everydayers. With that being said, I love them.
Care about the Phoenix Suns, and so do we. But I am not at 0% that they would fire Bud, but I'm probably only at about 10.
And I love I love the everydayers. I love just sometimes take a chill pill. We're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay.
I think we're all just kind of ready to see what happens. And there is an element of when it just stays bad for so long, you just kind of run out of things to blame it on, even if the first thing you blamed it on is probably the right one. It's just like we're all so fed up that we just want to keep pointing our finger at the next thing, or whatever happens in one game. You want to it's that now and whatever. But all right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow, subscribe if you have not already. We will be here for you all week. We got a game on Tuesday night, Suns Grizzlies. We got Suns Pelicans on Thursday. Great. A lot to get to. What did you say? Man.
You said we got a game on Tuesday. I was like, oh, great. Can't wait to see them lose that game and tell everyone, oh, Booker, you need to go somewhere else. Oh, you're just so great. Oh, God. I'm going to put myself through a wall before the end of the season.
There will at least be basketball to talk about the next time we convene. Enjoy your Tuesday, guys. We'll catch you later.